Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we are currently less than a month away from the 2022 midterms. The fight to take back the House and the Senate is on for the Republicans, and there's going to be a lot of governorships that are going to be hotly contested as well. It's definitely going to be a very historic midterm year. It is going to be a night for the ages, and in this video I wanted to kind of build on what we talked about in the Senate prediction video, talking about these contested Senate races, what I like to call the Big Four, the four that are going to be the most competitive races in 2022. Wanted to touch base on them, talk about them a little bit more in depth in this video, explain who is really favored at this point to take each one of these races. Keep in mind, Republicans need 51 Senate seats to take back the Senate. Democrats need 50 because Kamala Harris does break the ties because she is the current VP. So it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out at the end of the day, although it is very, very likely that Republicans do retake the Senate at this point. And a lot of people might disagree in the election mafia, and we're going to talk about that in this video, but I'm going to explain why they're probably going to be favored in all four of these. But first, I have to tell you guys about our very good friends over at the Veteran Challenge coin. And veteran suicides have been going through the roof lately. It's been reported that at least 22 veterans commit suicide every single day, and recent studies show the actual rate may be much higher. This is an absolute tragedy. We must support our veterans now more than ever, and you can do so by getting a Veteran Challenge coin. You can claim the coin for free by clicking the link in the description or pinned comment down below. Just cover shipping. It comes with a 60-day satisfaction guarantee for a limited time only while supplies last, and it supports our veterans in the process. So I wanted to touch base on each one of these four states. Wanted to do a little bit more of a deep dive. Wanted to go in depth in this video on each one of these states, because this is where the power in the Senate is going to be decided on. This is where it all comes down to, these four states. And the election mafia, 538 Nate Silver, as I like to call him, Nate Plastic, he now has Republicans at 33% in terms of their chances of retaking the Senate. Now keep in mind, that is up significantly from a few weeks ago. They were down there close to 20%, if not even a little bit below that. But as we sit here on October 10th, they have raised the chances to 33%. We know it's much higher. Even PredictIt knows it's much higher. PredictIt has Republicans at roughly around 50-50 with the Dems. If I was going to place a bet on who was going to hold the Senate after the midterms, I would personally place the bet on the Republicans. But this is very true, and it's so laughable. I mean, I'm tired of the gaslighting because it's worse now than ever. I mean, I don't know how somebody could be so wrong time and time again, over and over again, and still find a way to make excuses just so they could keep the viewers engaged. It's laughable, but that's exactly what Nate Silver does. He was wrong in 2016. He was wrong about a decent amount in 2018. He was vastly wrong in 2020, and he's probably going to be even more wrong than before in 2022. You know, sometimes you make a mistake, you adjust your methodology, you move on. He's doubling down. In fact, he's making it worse. He's unskewing the polls in favor of the Democrats in many places. It's hilarious. But we look at Pennsylvania even, and they have Dr. Oz at 28%. He has a 28% chance of winning in Pennsylvania. Yet you look at Ohio, he gives Tim Ryan a better chance than he gives Oz. He gives Mandela Barnes a better chance than he gives Oz. He gives Sherry Beasley, who's probably going to lose by like 6 or 7 points, a better chance than he gives Oz. And Masters, by the way. He has Masters down there at 19, which we'll talk a little bit about each of these races. But still, RCP's a little bit better because at least they're taking the polling error into account with their projections. This is true. You look at how the polls are underestimating them 29 days out of Election Day, and you look at the adjusted polling average, and this takes the past 3 cycles into account, and it would show that Dr. Oz would be leading by a couple of points, which is probably what I anticipate. I think that that is about right. You look at this map right here. You look at where the election is decided. Oz is doing very well in a lot of polling in Philadelphia. A lot of people are saying he's going to get over 20% there. If he does so, and he gets over 20 in Philadelphia, makes modest improvements in some of the counties surrounding Philadelphia, it is game over. Oz did very well in the primary in a lot of the Philadelphia suburbs. He did very well in Bucks County. I think he's probably going to win it. And at that point, you're looking at the math. And the math for John Fetterman is not exactly there, especially if Oz is doing better in Philadelphia. He's doing better in Pittsburgh. You look at the fact that Fetterman bottomed out in Philadelphia in the primary. He did very poorly, especially in a lot of the black precincts. You're looking at turnout potentially dipping in a place like Philadelphia. It's not looking good for him. And you talk about the polls in the primary. The polls underestimated Western Pennsylvania significantly. They had David McCormick getting in the mid-teens. He almost beat Oz. He got roughly a third of the vote because he did well in Western Pennsylvania. Now, McCormick is a total grifter. We know this. He was grifting as always America First now when he was talking about impeaching Trump a little bit more than a year prior. But still, that's beside the point. The bottom line is that the polls have consistently underestimated Western Pennsylvania. And a lot of the polls have Oz winning among independent voters, which means he's probably doing well in a place like Chester. He's winning independents in nearly every single poll. And the undecided voters are mainly Republicans who are skeptical of his past record, many of whom have already come home. And you look at the polls in Pennsylvania right now, Fetterman is only up by 3.7. This is a race that is within the margin of error, and that is without a Susquehanna poll in there. That is without a Trafalgar poll in there, polls that, you know, historically have been fairly more accurate in Pennsylvania than a lot of the mainstream media election mafia polls. But even in those polls, Fetterman holds a 3.7% lead. And you're also looking at the fact that there has not been a poll released in the state of Pennsylvania over the past 10 days. Technically, the Suffolk poll came out about a week ago, but still that polling sample was from late September. It is very possible that we will see a poll come out in the next week or two that has Dr. Oz in the lead. And one look at Fetterman's campaign and one look at the way that Fetterman speaks every time he opens his mouth, he's very incoherent. That's not going to vibe well with a lot of voters. It's really not, coupled with his record, especially on crime. Oz has been getting on the airwaves. Now, a lot of people are reporting seeing more Oz commercials than Fetterman commercials. Fetterman's talking about New Jersey. Oz is talking about crime. Fetterman is somebody who advocated for releasing about a third of all prisoners in the state of Pennsylvania, especially at a time when crime is rising out of control. So definitely Dr. Oz has the upper hand when it comes to a wide variety of the issues. The only thing Fetterman can talk about is New Jersey hit Oz for fake scandals like the whole puppy thing nobody cares about, and he could sit up there and maybe talk about some like positions that Oz has on issues that Oz has never even expressed, trying to paint him as like some hardline right-winger, which is pretty funny. If Oz was nearly as based as they say he is, he probably would be winning. He probably would be doing a lot better in Western Pennsylvania in the polls, which is the ironic thing about it. But that's really beside the point for Pennsylvania. I think that Pennsylvania is a state where Republicans are going to win, possibly at the end of the day by a couple of points in the state. It's possible Oz could even run up the score as we get closer to Election Day. If you see that polling error in Western Pennsylvania that we saw in the primaries, and that polling error is getting worse and worse and worse. And people might say, well, polling errors for the primaries don't usually carry over to the general, but they do. In fact, you could point to Michigan in 2016, Hillary's underperformance in Wisconsin in 2016, Trump's overperformance in Pennsylvania in 2016 compared to the polls, and you could see where the polling errors were. So they definitely matter. Because it shows the quality of polling in that given state. They may not be as drastic because there's a lot of late deciders and primaries compared to general elections, but still the errors are there, and every single poll consistently underestimated Western Pennsylvania, which is a very pivotal place, and that place is filled with voters in the general election who are going to vote for Dr. Oz and Doug Mastriano. So keep that in mind, but it's looking pretty good for Republicans in Pennsylvania, and you could see why RCP has moved this one into the projection column for a Republican hold. So now we're going to go down to Georgia, which they actually have it as a Democrat hold in RCP because Warnock does lead the polling average by 4, and there really hasn't been a massive polling error in the state of Georgia in recent history, and if there has been, it's usually been in the other direction for some reason. But you look at the polls that are in the mix here, you have Survey USA. Survey USA is an illegitimate pollster. You look at Survey USA throughout history, we've seen polls that have just had one candidate up by 15 and then they lose, or the other. Doesn't exactly matter which party they're polling. They've been off the wall time and time again and have been fairly inaccurate. And you see this with a lot of polls in this mix. Fox News is arguably the same way. And contrary to popular belief, Fox News is not a right-leaning pollster. So you have this scandal that drops where Herschel Walker's son turns on Herschel Walker over a current scandal, which has already been mainstream for months now. It was mainstream before he even ran. And people are acting like this is the end of the Herschel Walker campaign because of this. And it's like, no, there are skeletons in his closet, you could say, or there are scandals that are being thrown his way. Some may be, more grounded in reality than others. But a lot of the same scandals also apply to Raphael Warnock. We call him wife-beater Warnock for a reason over here. And beyond that point, it doesn't really seem as if this is going to impact Herschel Walker too much. The only people that were going to vote against Herschel Walker because of this fact alone were probably never going to vote for Herschel Walker. This is a new era in politics. The, personal scandals don't really have that much of an impact. You look at how it didn't really impact Raphael Warnock back in 2020. It's probably not going to impact Herschel Walker in 2022. And this is true. So the polling averages within the margin of error with some objectively bad polls in there. A Warnock plus 12 that came out of nowhere from Survey USA. Yeah, that's not exactly enough reason for me to say, oh, it's over for Walker in this state. I think this is going to be a very close race. I think besides that poll, besides the CBS poll without any undecideds, Warnock is down below 48 as an incumbent. This is really a race that Walker will, in my opinion, have the possibility to win. I think that it's going to come down to the wire. I do believe that Brian Kemp is going to win the state by probably over 5. And at that point, I believe that he will carry Herschel Walker to the finish line. Herschel Walker is somebody who has the celebrity factor going for him. A lot of the personal scandals tend to bounce off more if you are of the celebrity status. You look at Donald Trump, he was accused of a lot of things that were false. It didn't really impact him a whole lot in 2016 or 2020, to the point where it's like, yeah, Herschel Walker, he's an outsider. He's somebody that's beloved as a football star in the state. I think this is going to bounce off of him. Relatively speaking. And a lot of the people that are turning on him initially supported his campaign, which again kind of gives a little skepticism to how serious the claims may have been if these people were supporting such an evil guy at the onset of the campaign. But either way, I believe that you look at Georgia, you just need to see a little bit of a bounce back in the Atlanta suburbs, and potentially midterm turnout among black voters dipping would arguably be enough. This was a razor-thin state. Trends are working against Republicans. However, it is a midterm year. Biden is still underwater by 10 plus points in the approval rating, probably by even more than that in the state of Georgia. I personally don't believe that Herschel Walker has too much to worry about, and thankfully, the NRSC and Rick Scott are still funding him. They're standing beside him, and that's good, because all these people that are referenced in the Big Four, they either vote with Biden 100% of the time or close to that, or in Fetterman's case, they will vote for Biden 100% of the time. So that's it for the state of Georgia. I wanted to go west. We could talk about Arizona. What a debate that was last week. Blake Masters just going out there and really standing out against Mark Kelly, who sounded like a broken record, was attacking Blake Masters. Masters would debunk the attack, and then Mark Kelly would double down. He just came across as very uncharismatic. He came across as somebody who just was that career politician, and I don't really think that's going to play out too well, because he really couldn't even run from the record. He just went out there, said Masters bad, and Masters countered that, and he hit Kelly pretty hard where it mattered, and that was absolutely huge for him in the state of Arizona. And this is a state that RCP has in the Republican column. They have Republicans at 52. I think at the end of the day, 53 is more than likely. I'm going to stick with it. But right now, Mark Kelly's up in the polls by 4.1. But at this point, back in the 2020 election, Mark Kelly was leading by a lot more than 4 against McSally, and he only ended up getting by a little bit less than 2.5 points. And the fact is that Kelly is still below 50% as an incumbent. That's never really a good thing. and he's performing far worse than he was in the 2020 election. And still, a lot of the polls in the mix, we know how they have underestimated Republicans in the past, whether it is Suffolk, whether it is Data for Progress, whether it is Marist. CNN has a poll in there as well. We're still about a month away from the election, and Masters tends to be surging. This guy was somebody who came up from behind in the primary and won roughly in the last couple of months or so. I think you're going to see a very similar thing happen right here this fall in the state of Arizona. And in terms of where the path to victory for Masters is on the map, it's pretty easy. He's going to have to run it up in the exurban areas, which I believe he will, especially with the border being a top issue. He definitely won the debate on the border issue hands down. You talk about a place like Yuma, a place that moved right in 2020. He's probably going to do better there. You talk about a place like Mojave County. You talk about where Prescott is up in Yavapai. These are the places that he's going to need to do well in, as well as trim the margins in places like Maricopa. He may win Maricopa at the end of the day. It's going to be very close. Do well there, as well as Pima County. He might do better in Pima, especially as Republicans are doing a little bit better with Hispanics, and that's also his home county as well. And you look at Predicted and where Predicted stands right now, Blake Masters over the past couple of weeks or so, he's surging. He was at 36, now he's up at 43. So you see a little bit of movement there in his favor, and that is really just because of the debate. We haven't seen any polls since then, but it's very possible that Blake Masters, the way that the poll trajectories have historically gone in the state of Arizona, he very well could be leading the polling aggregate by Election Day. But either way, that is going to still be a close race when it's all said and done. So we're going to go down to the state of Nevada. What does Nate Plastic have Nevada? Oh, even Nate Plastic has Nevada as a pure toss-up, basically, which that's very good news for Adam Laxalt. And you look at RCP right now, they have Laxalt up in the polls by 2.1%. He's winning in every single poll that comes out. And the only rebuttal to why Laxalt might not exactly win is because, oh, Mosto's an incumbent, and polls in Nevada have actually underestimated Democrats. And Masto is an incumbent, but she can't even get above 46% in a single poll. Even a Democrat internal poll or a CNN poll, she cannot get above 46% to save her life. That is a little bit of a problem. And in terms of polls underestimating Democrats in the state of Nevada, they didn't in 2020. They did in 2018, but there wasn't a whole lot of polls that we saw come out. They did it in 2016, but there were very few polls, again, in the aggregate. So right now, the fact is you have about 5 or 6 polls in the aggregate. Laxalt is winning every single one. He's got the funding. Democrats in their apparatus that would do a very good job at reaching voters and turning out voters is essentially gone. The whole leadership in the party was replaced earlier last year by the DSA individuals, which are far more incompetent, especially if the primary is any indication. And you talk about Clark County moving right. You only need to see a little bit of movement in Clark County. This is a county that voted for Obama over Romney by around 15 points. It voted for Biden by just 9 points. And if that's within 7, Republicans are probably winning the state of Nevada. And with trends among white working class voters in recent years, with trends among Hispanic voters, I think you're probably going to see that. And even Nate Plastic knows it. He's not exactly going to put it in Laxalt's column now because that's not exactly the kind of guy that he is. But either way, we know very well that Republicans are favored in the state of Nevada, which would bring their total to 53 if they were able to win all 4 of these. But this is where the energy needs to be. Less, money and resources being put towards Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, or Wisconsin. There are some House races there that need to be funded. But in terms of the Senate candidates or the Senate races there, no. Tim Ryan's going to lose by around 10. Mandela Barnes is going to lose by around 7. So is Beasley. Rubio's probably going to win by close to double digits, if not over that. And Republicans are going to have a good year. But you got to understand, this all comes down to these 4 races. This is where it's determined. And Republicans appear to be in very good shape in all 4 of them. It's not over. We have almost a month to go. There's a lot of work left to do here. But either way here, in terms of controlling the Senate, you'd rather be in the Republicans' position right now than the Democrats. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out.